Hey folks, it's Mr. Fox. This is the video that I asked you to watch that we didn't have time to address in class. So hopefully you're getting to this sometime before the test. Anyway, this is actually the third time I've actually tried to do this. So hopefully this recording actually works. Anyway, what we're going to talk about is more kind of concepts and topics related to religion. So I would like you to go ahead and turn to page 80 in your booklet, and we're going to talk about some things, and you can jot down some notes on page 80. Periodically, I might be asking you to pause the video and do some things in the booklet. So just be prepared for that. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is this idea of language versus religion. Of course, this is the culture unit, as we know, and yeah, just a couple things about how religion and language are kind of different in terms of how people maintain them, especially when they migrate. So the first thing to note is when people migrate, most people actually take on the language of their new home. And so we know that when people move to, a new place where they speak a different language, people generally learn that language. It might not be right away. It might take a little while, and certainly by a second generation, people will have taken on that language. But what's interesting is when people migrate, most people do not take on the religion of their new home, which is kind of interesting. And so the question as to those things is why, and you might take a second to think about, well, why would they take on the language of their new home, but not the religion generally of their new home? And if you think about it, the answer is simple. Well, there's a couple answers. One, people tend not to just give up their religion, mostly because, it's part of their, core belief system and, about what happens to your immortal soul. So, people aren't just willing to switch those really easily. The second thing is you can't really do more. You can't practice multiple religions at the same time. So language, you can practice multiple languages or speak multiple languages. And so that's a big difference. So, you move to, say a person from Mexico comes to the United States, they speak Spanish and English, and there's nothing, wrong with that. And everybody, it's actually quite common. Whereas the same is not true for religion. People generally don't practice multiple religions. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind, I think, which is important. Next thing, on that big circle on page 80, you can see there's a place for you to jot down these percentages in this pie chart. So these are the percentages of people around the world who practice these religions. And so at some point, well, either while I'm talking or if you want to pause this, you can pause this and recreate this in your booklet. Just to point out a couple things, which are probably pretty obvious, but I'm going to point them out anyway. Christianity is about a third of all people are Christians, and about a quarter of all people are Muslims. So huge numbers. We're talking about 2 billion, roughly 2 billion Christians. Less, obviously, quite a bit less than that. I think somewhere around maybe 1 or 1.5 billion Muslims. You got 15% Hindus, 7% Buddhists, almost 6% folk religions. So these are going to be people who practice like Taoism, Confucianism, maybe African folk religions or other. There's lots of folk religions around. People that don't necessarily have a books and those sorts of things. So about 6%, which is actually quite a few. 2% Jewish. So again, not a huge number of Jews in the world. And then 0.8% other religions. So all those other smaller religions you guys were asked to learn about. So Zoroastrianism and Jainism and Sikhism and all of those are only 0.8%. And so that's actually a very small number of other religions, which is kind of interesting. And then unaffiliated means it could mean atheist or agnostic, or it could just mean spiritual, but don't belong to a particular faith. They're not, they're unaffiliated. So you can pause this and go ahead and recreate that now. Moving on. Okay, next thing I want to talk about is this map, and we're going to address this in a couple different ways. But on page 81 is a blank world map where you can go ahead and recreate this. And I would go ahead and pause this now and get some colored pencils and recreate this map on page 81, because it's really important you know where all of the different religions are. Where do people practice the different religions? So, and again, this is generally, this is on average, like, it shows, the yellow, 2 different shades of yellow are where people tend to practice Christianity. And there are people practice other religions as well. It's just where it's a majority. So this is where these colors are for where there's a majority of one religion or another. So yellow is, of course, Christian. Green is Muslim. Purple is Hindu. You can see here, it's a little hard to see, but there's like a bright pink. It's right here in what is in Israel, but it's very difficult to see. Blue is going to be Buddhist, okay? And then this gray is actually what they're calling unaffiliated. And so that's especially in China, where the government really doesn't allow people to practice religion. So that's part of it. And then this is interesting. Japan does have Buddhists. It does have Christians. It has lots of other things. But a lot of people in Japan will go ahead and practice like Shintoism. And as you read about in your homework, Shinto is more of a cultural way of life, as opposed to a specific religion with gods and things like that. So anyway, the brown is where there's no clear majority. And so that's true in Nigeria and a couple other places, including Vietnam and South Korea. So anyway, if you haven't already paused me and recreated this map, please do so. Okay, we're back. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is this idea of classification. So there's 2 ways to classify religions in terms of how many people practice them. So there's one concept called a universalizing religion. So I talked a little bit about this in class already. So I know this is repetitive, but I want to just go over it again to make sure everybody understands it. A universalizing religion attempts to appeal to all people. So the goal is to convert people to that religion. So Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, those are all universalizing religions. Okay, so anybody can become a Christian, anybody can become a Muslim, or anybody can become a Buddhist. So when you look at this map, you can see the evidence of that. So you can see Christianity is throughout, all of Europe and the Americas and Africa, Australia, the Philippines. So it's widespread. Same thing with Islam. And similarly with Buddhism, because anybody can become a Buddhist. And with some of them, especially Christianity and Islam, there's active and very well-funded attempts to actually convert people. That's the goal, is to get everybody to become your religion. The opposite, I guess, I don't know if it's opposite, but the other category is called an ethnic religion. So an ethnic religion tends to appeal to one group. So, for example, Judaism, Hinduism, and other folk religions like African folk religions would all be considered ethnic religions. And it's because they appeal to one ethnic group. For example, Judaism appeals to Jewish people. Hinduism appeals to ethnic Indians. And then folk religions obviously would appeal to, whatever particular ethnic group they belong to. So the whole idea behind this is that Judaism, people don't really convert to Judaism or Hinduism. It can happen, but it's rare. And so yeah, those are ethnic religions. And so when we go back to this map, we can see that in where we have ethnic religions, we can see that those are not widespread. Obviously India has and Nepal here, both countries, people practice Hinduism, and it's a big country and there's lots of people because India is so big. But it's not spread throughout the world because people don't convert to Hinduism for the most part. Same thing with little Israel down here. Just very few Jews in the world generally. So that's the difference between ethnic and universalizing religions. So I already kind of did this for you, but you should be able to, and you know, there could definitely be an FRQ about this, be able to talk about the idea of how does the map demonstrate the geographic representation of universalizing an ethnic religion, which I just talked about. Okay, so now let's go ahead and turn the page to page 82 and 83. On pages 82 and 83, this references an article that's actually on Google Classroom. There's an extra credit assignment if you read the article and answer the question on page 83. But I was briefly just going to go over what the article says and talks about. And you can jot down some notes on page 82. And as I'm talking, I don't necessarily have, I don't have a lot of text on the slides. So you're going to just have to jot down kind of what I talk about. But also it's posted on, the article is posted on Google Classroom. So you can go ahead and read that if you want some more details. But, and you would have to do the part 83, the part on page 83 in order to get the extra credit for that. So, so what this article is about, as it says here, well, actually, I'm not sure, it doesn't really say it here, but it says on page 82, the article is about, the title is Many Countries Favor Specific Religions Officially or Unofficially. So really what this shows is, we'll start with official state religions. And so 43 countries actually have official state religions. And that can mean a lot of different things, but one of the things it means is it's stated in the law, right? The relationship or the fact that it's an official state religion is stated in the law. So what could this mean? This could mean that you have to be a member of that religion in order to be in the government. It could mean that the government supports that religion financially. It could mean that you know, there are actually laws that come from that religion. We talked a little bit about Sharia law, and there are some countries that enforce Sharia law or Islamic law. And you can see that most of the countries that have an official state religion are Muslim countries. So all of these countries would be Muslim countries that have official state religion. So the majority are Muslim, but not exclusively. You have Buddhist Cambodia, which would also be official state religion. You have Christian Iceland. You also have Christian Norway and United Kingdom and Denmark. So you have some other countries that are also Christians that have official state religions, or Buddhists in case of Cambodia. So on page 82, there's a place for you to jot down some selected countries. So you should do that now, maybe a couple of Muslim countries and a couple of the other ones as well. Okay, so that's official religions. Then the article categorizes another group by what they call preferred or favored religions. And so this is pretty much scattered throughout the world. There's a lot in Europe, but there's some in Africa and other places, in Indonesia, for example. But what's true of this is they again, it's called preferred or favored religions. So this doesn't necessarily, it's not stated in law, but you know, they might give financial support to the religion. There might be a relationship between the religion and the government somehow that that creates some sort of favoritism, and it could manifest itself in lots of different ways that the article would talk about. But you can see again some selected countries. There's some Christian countries, European Christian countries like Italy and Spain and Poland, etc. And then you can see maybe Turkey and Syria are both Muslim. Indonesia, also Muslim. And then of course some Christian countries in Latin America. So those are favored or preferred religions. Okay. The next one is, as the text talks about, these are countries where there is no official or preferred religion. So you can see the vast majority of countries around the world actually are in this category, 106 countries. And they, in these countries, there's generally a separation between what we call it in this country, between church and state. So the whole idea is the government, the two, they stay separate. And, you know, so, and sometimes, sometimes like in the United States, sometimes this separation is by law, right? In the United States, we have laws that say the church and the state cannot be, you know, cannot have anything to do with each other. They have to remain separate. And that's actually true in most of the rest of the world. And, you know, a lot of people argue that's the better way to go, but that's actually part of the question on page 83 about whether or not it's good to have an official state religion or not. But anyway, you just jot down a couple selected countries. And again, by the way, you know, this does not mean it's totally separated, because, for example, even the United States has some religion. You know, in our money, it says God, in God we trust. And, you know, we we have things like prayers in Congress and things like that. So it's not a total separation, but there's an attempt to separate. Okay. And then the last one is where countries where people are, the government is hostile to religion. So the government, in this case, the government actively tries to suppress religion. These are mostly a legacy of the communist era. So all of these countries all were once or still are communist. And so the countries you can see here are obviously China and Vietnam, both of which claim to still be kind of communist in some ways. And same thing with Cuba. And then you've got these other countries that were once part of the Soviet Union. You've got Azerbaijan and then the Central Asian republics. All of these countries, you know, some people can be, in some cases, you can be arrested, or, you know, it could be a criminal offense to practice religion. And so that's, those countries are hostile to religion. Okay. Again, write down some selected countries, please. All right. So next, next thing I want to talk about is this idea of how scale matters. And what I mean by that is, if you look at this map, you can look at the United States and you see that it says, you know, it's light yellow, so it means not everybody practices Christianity, but it is a Christian country. It says there, at least North America, which includes Canada, but it's about 77% of North America is Christian. But there's more detail. If you zoom in and you look at more of the national level, you can see that there's more going on than just it being a Christian country. So we're going to actually look at that. We're going to look at this idea of where are these different religious groups. Most of these that we're going to look at are Christian, but within Christianity, there's a lot of diversity. And so that's what we're going to look at today. So on page 84, you have a map. And this is going to get a little bit, you know, maybe a little bit chaotic, but I think it should be helpful. What I'd like you to do now, maybe you need to, if you don't already have them really close, you need to definitely get some colored pencils or some pens, something to help you make these maps. And so I'm going to show you the different maps, and then I'm going to kind of guide you to what you should write on the maps. Okay. By the way, you'll notice that all these maps are from 2000, the 2000 census. This was put together by, somebody, I guess the census, the actual US Census. And these are the most recent maps I could find. So they're all, I think they're still pretty accurate. I mean, people don't move around that much, and the religions don't change that much. So you can pretty much accept that these are pretty standard and true still today. But for Catholics, the few places that Catholics are, you can see there's a dominant amount of Catholics here in the Southwest, and of course that's going to be again on the the border with U.S. and Mexico, and these are going to be Hispanic Catholics, and for obvious reasons, they're right there on the border with Mexico, and so this is where people, a lot of migrants are, and a lot of people who have lived here for many generations, for that matter. And then down here, you also have another kind of category of Catholics, but those are not going to be primarily Hispanic. These people are from the legacy of French colonialism. So yeah, these, we've talked about these people who speak French, a French Creole down here. Those people tend to also be Catholic. Um, French is a Catholic country. France is a Catholic country. Up here in the Northeast, these people are going to be, lots of different people, but, about 100 years ago, 120 years ago, there were a lot of people coming from Italy, Catholics from Italy, Ireland. So you got your Irish, you got your Polish, your Italians, and more recently, you're going to have people like Puerto Ricans. So that's mostly up in the upper the Northeast. And then over here, you've got quite a few like just mixed European ancestry. Again, the thing to keep in mind about this map, and remember, this is called a choropleth, where there's this shading based on some particular variable. And you always want to look at over here at the key to see, what percentage we're talking about. So the dark blue is over 50% of that county is Catholic. But just to keep in mind, some of these counties up here that in the north just basically have, maybe a couple thousand people. So we're not talking about huge numbers. These are very small numbers in those counties. Okay, so that's Catholic. What about the next one? The next one we're going to talk about is the Amish. And so the Amish are, there's not huge numbers. So see, even the dark green here is between 8 and 17%. So again, nowhere are we talking about Amish being a huge number. By the way, the Amish are a Protestant denomination of people who shun technology. They are as we talked about, they are a utopian society where everybody shares everything and nobody has private property, and they do not want anything like television or radios or anything in their communities. And they live in isolated communities. They do not mix with the rest of the world. So you can see a couple places where you can note the Amish. There's here in Ohio. There's a couple places here in Indiana. Those are some of the bigger ones, and then just a couple scattered throughout. I wouldn't bother with any of the yellow places because, again, that's only 0.1 to 2%, so it's not a huge number. So that's the Amish. Next one we could look at is Jewish population. And a couple places where you should note the Jewish population here in southern Florida, and then the Jewish population up here in the Northeast, in and around Boston, New York, Philadelphia, down here to Washington, D.C. So all these are counties where there's a significant Jewish population. But again, look, even the dark purple ones are between 10 and 31%. So doesn't look like there's very many counties where Jews are the dominant or even a majority. I'm not sure if there's anywhere where Jews are a majority in a county. But nonetheless, the other thing you should notice is you could also associate Jews with, Jews are usually in urban areas. So rural counties, you're not going to find very many Jews. And so you can see this even in, just looking at this, you can see where the most Jews are where the cities are. So San Francisco and Los Angeles and Las Vegas and Denver, and, even in the some of these Midwestern cities like St. Louis, Detroit, Atlanta. So all those are places. So Jews tend to be in urban areas. Okay. Next, Muslims. So there's a couple places I will draw your attention to. Again, this scale we're talking about is pretty small, so not a lot of Muslims in this country. But where there are Muslims are in and around Washington, D.C. You can see kind of this area. And then, of course, here in what is around the suburbs of Detroit, there's actually a suburb of Detroit called Dearborn that has a huge Muslim population, biggest in the country, I believe. And you also see in and around Atlanta here. So I'm not quite sure. Those might be what we might think of as a Nation of Islam people. So what's sometimes called Black Muslims. And if you've studied the civil rights movement, you would know associated with people like Malcolm X and that sort of thing. But I'm not sure if that's the case or not. But again, not huge numbers. This is the one map where I would imagine maybe it's different today. So in 20 years, we probably do have quite a few more Muslims in the United States. Okay, next one. Next one is the Baptists. So the Baptists are, again, just a Protestant denomination. They tend to be in the South, right? So it's associated with the South, almost exclusively, really, if you look at it. And so they're pretty conservative, the Baptists. And other things to note about them, we often refer to this as the Bible Belt. Of course, the Bible Belt, as we know, is a is what we call a vernacular region, because it's not something that has borders or anything. It's just how some people perceive things. So it's a vernacular region, the Bible Belt. Okay, pretty conservative folks. Next is the Lutherans, and the Lutherans are up here in the north, and so in and around the Dakotas and Minnesota, up into Wisconsin, down here into Nebraska, and these are really people. So this, Northern Europe. These are Northern European people of Northern European descent, and those are the people who are most associated with the Lutherans. Okay, so we're going to see a lot of Scandinavians as well. So those are the Northern Europeans up there. Okay. Next is the Methodists. And again, this is just another Protestant denomination, but you can see kind of in the middle of the country. Nebraska, Oklahoma, Kansas, and here in Iowa, a lot of Methodists. So you can jot that down as well. Make sure to shade that. And the last one, I think, is the LDS Church, or the Mormons. So the place where the LDS Church or the Mormons dominate is here in and around Utah. So Utah and southern Idaho, and again, you'll see the scale we've got of this choropleth is about 50% more than 50%. So all these counties have more than 50% Mormons, and in some cases much more, probably upwards of 80% in some of these counties. Of course, we've talked about how they came out here from New York, and kind of how slowly but surely their territory is shrunk down to this state called Utah. Okay, last thing to look at is just this kind of idea of where people are not religious. So people tend not to be very religious. A couple places to point out up here, like Maine area, West Virginia, this kind of, it's a little bit surprising. Some of these places, I kind of think of them as more conservative and maybe religious. Arizona, but also Oregon. Maybe you guys have heard Oregon is very non-religious. Not very many people go to church in Oregon. And you can see it's one of the least religious states in the country. Okay, so that's all I have for this. Hopefully you had a chance to make sure to get everything noted. And yeah, sorry I had to make you do an extra thing on your own, but yeah, it's the hand we've been dealt. So take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.